Okay, this is a 1990 BMW 5 Series, and in the past couple weeks, it's slowly developed a low engine speed misfire, or stuttering. It's stalled out on me a few times in the parking lot. If I want to get going smoothly, I have to give it about 2,000 RPM. Above 2,500 or 3,000 RPM, it runs fine. So on the highway, it runs fine, but parking lot speeds, it'll stumble and stall. So I want to make a video about how, as an amateur mechanic and somebody who has a little bit of experience with these inline sixes, how I go about troubleshooting that and fixing it. One big thing to note here is that this is my car and I've owned this car for a long time. So I know that the vacuum lines are in good shape. BMWs of this generation and a lot of engines, that run on crankcase vacuum, they'll develop all kinds of weird running issues if the vacuum system is in bad shape. So if you have splits in all these vacuum lines, or the air intake boot right here, if it's letting a lot of air in after the mass airflow meter, or the mass airflow sensor or the airflow meter, it can develop a lot of issues. So if you don't know the condition of that system, I would get a smoke test and maybe just replace those lines if you don't know when they were last replaced. But we're approaching this as if this car has a healthy vacuum system, which I think it does. I think it's an ignition issue, not a fueling issue, because when it happens, I smell a lot of unburnt fuel. And I have had fueling issues in these cars before, in the BMW 5 Series, the E34 5 Series. And typically that'll be throughout the rev range. And it really feels more like power is going all the way off and all the way on. This is more of a low engine speed misfire, so I think it's ignition related. So we're going to start with the ignition system. The first thing I'm going to do is a visual inspection of the ignition wires. All right, this engine is an M5. It's an S38B36. But aside from the big intake plenum and the independent throttle bodies, it's the same engine management and ignition system that's in a lot of other inline sixes, BMWs of that era, or this era. So it's in the E30 325i, 318s, the 5 Series 535i, 7 Series 735i. It's just a distributor cap and rotor with spark plug wires going to the spark plugs. So very simple. What I would first do is, and I did this in the parking lot when I pulled over because I was having this issue, and I'm just going to make sure that all these are tight. So I have in the past maybe found one that somehow backed off or something. So I'm going to make sure that these are all tight. And right here on the coil pack also, on the firewall. And because, the magic of YouTube and everything, I did this in the past and it didn't help. So my next step is going to be to pull these out of the cylinders, and I'm checking for oil in the spark plug holes. And it's dirty in there in cylinder 1, but it's not caked on. So I'm going to pull out cylinder 2. Okay, we are looking for standing oil down there in the spark plug hole. So we would look for a little puddle of black oil around the base of that spark plug. And these are dirty, but I don't see a puddle of oil. Now, I'm not sure how true this is, but I'm told that what happens is that oil messes with the spark plug's ability to ground itself against the engine block. So you can still have a good connection on the top of the spark plug and this boot, but the spark plug has an issue grounding out with the engine because the oil gets in the way and insulates it, and that can cause a misfire. So nothing's jumping out at me there. I'm going to check the bottom of these boots. These all look fine. Oh, I can't see in there, but. So I would be looking for the connectors that clip on to the spark plug. I'd be looking for them to be cracked or damaged. That isn't necessarily an indicator that they're not working. I have had cars in the past. I had an M70, BMW's V12. It's basically two M20s sandwiched together. And it had, the leads looked really bad, but they still worked fine. So don't go spend a whole bunch of money if you find that these boots are cracked. Okay, I wanted to put a note here because I'm not really making a lot of sense when I talk about the ignition wires. I'm pulling these off and looking at how they connect to the spark plug. on the top. But in my experience, I have had them look bad, but still connect to the spark plug fine and do a good job. And I want to make that point because if you pull off your spark plug wires and you see a crack in the boot or corrosion where the spark plug wires connect to the spark plug, and you go, okay, I'm just going to replace those parts, that can be a couple $100s that you don't need to spend. So on the M20 and M30, OEM spark plug wire sets are still $200. On the M5, they're at $500 or $600 now. And then on the M70, which is a V12, I'm sure I didn't even look those up. I don't know what they are, but they can be very expensive. So my point here is you're looking for a major issue, but I wouldn't automatically just go ahead and start throwing parts at it. I would take a note and keep going through the system. If you can't find anything else and you suspect that maybe it is the spark plug wires, I would run a resistance test on those spark plug wires, which you can just go Google that and you'll find somebody who knows more than I do explaining how you would do that. My next step is going to be to check here on the distributor cap. So I'm popping these guys off and checking them out. They all seem fine. All right, nothing's jumping out at me yet. I think it's time for this cap and rotor to come off. Okay. Trying to do this one-handed so I don't screw up this stuff is harder than it looks. I realize now that this is providing almost no good perspective on how to take this thing out. So I'm sorry for that, but I'll show you here in a second. Okay. Here we have the cap and rotor. All right. Now this is a likely culprit. These are the contact points right here. See a bunch of dirt and debris behind them. These look pretty corroded. Look at that guy right there. Here's the one I got from FCP Euro. It's a Bremmy. So it's not BMW, but they are an original equipment manufacturer. It was $80. All right. This guy. So much cleaner, good contact surfaces, and then this is the guy that I installed in 2010. Now it looks like the corrosion is, I wonder how pitted it actually is. I'm gonna clean this up. I'm just gonna wipe this down. I'm gonna go through here with a paper towel and a shop towel, and then I think I might just try to clean up these contacts and throw it back in, and then go run some errands and see what happens. All right, this is what we got. Good enough for a test. Let's move over here to the rotor. Now the rotor attaches to the front of the camshaft, the exhaust camshaft, I think. Should be right here. So it's angled towards the driver's side firewall, so we can't see it from this point of view. And I don't want to turn the engine over just to get that. But here's a new one. Here's one also from FCP Euro. It's a Bosch, and this is $40. And we're worried about that little contact. Oh, come on, phone, you can do it. There we go. We're worried about that little brass edge. I don't even know how to work my own phone. Okay. So I am gonna put this new one back in the box. I've got this brass brush. And what I'm doing is I'm just finding that brass edge, and I'm just gonna feel it with my finger felt pretty rough, and I'm just going to give it a quick going over with the brass brush. Feels better. I don't see any material coming off. I don't know what y'all can or can't see, but just letting you know, I'm just trying to be honest. I cleaned up the contacts on the distributor cap, cleaned up the rotor. Now I'm going to put everything back together and go run some errands. Barely going snug on these guys. Maybe 10 foot-pounds. But definitely don't want to strip these guys out. All right. And now putting everything back together. This set is, everything is labeled. Everything's also labeled on the cap. Okay. Leads are done. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Idle sounds good. Something is whining. An accessory belt or something. One thing at a time. That's good. So right now, sitting at a stop sign, I would feel it vibrating. It would not be a healthy idle. I'd have to give it a lot of gas. I wouldn't be able to just let the clutch out and go in first. So big improvement. All right, I'm pulling out in first gear without even having to give it gas. So that hesitation's gone. See how oil temp isn't all the way up. See how it feels. I don't want to beat on it too hard. All right, feels good. Sound good. I love this engine. It's a stock exhaust, stock S38. I don't know what is being picked up by the camera, because I just have my iPhone mounted to a camera mount that I found at a junkyard a few months ago. But I've always loved these. I've loved the BMW inline 6s and especially the S38, obviously. Okay, so we took the car out and it drove fine. I mean, it's driving very well. It feels good. It feels when the issue's gone away, and it could be placebo effect. It could be, but it feels like it's healthier mid-range. Around like the 3,000 to 5,000 RPM, it feels a little bit healthier. So I'm pretty satisfied that the issue was just corroded contacts on the distributor cap. What if that weren't the case? What would we do next? So we pull off the distributor cap and rotor and everything looks fine. The next step is I would pull spark plugs. So I'd pull them out, I'd inspect them, and I would probably check the gap. I'd look for any difference between all 6 of them. Anyone standing out that's maybe broken, maybe one of the prongs broke off, something obvious, or they're just worn out, and then maybe you want to go ahead and just replace your spark plugs. After that, after spark plugs, what would we do? I would probably go into the vacuum system. I would probably start looking around for gaps in the intake boot, tears in the intake boot, and maybe go ahead and try to get a smoke test done to check for vacuum leaks. Something else you can do, if you look for other YouTube videos, they'll explain how to go through vacuum leaks. You can also look for starting fluid and spray it around the engine, and while it's idling. And so what that'll do is that when the engine's idling and you spray fluid in, if that starter fluid gets into the engine through a hole or a crack in the vacuum system, you'll hear the engine idle speed change. So that's a cue that somewhere around where you sprayed it, there's a hole in the system, and then you just get closer and closer until you can identify where that issue is. But yeah, I'm going to do some more work on this car in other videos, but I hope this was helpful to those of you who are not yet experienced with tinkering with your own engines yet.